Next, to help us on our journey, so Dr. Lynn Jones, who's been lecturing furniture students for some 25 years now and has shifted careers reasonably recently into helping graduates find work in industry. Dr. Jones, can we call you Lynn?
Yes.
Is that all right? Lynn's been head of department of furniture at New Bucks Uni, and is also an external examiner of 3 other universities, and has also established many collaborative projects with industry. So Herman Miller, I think Urkel can bear testament to that. So truly bridging the gap between education and industry, which is the key thing from today. So looking forward to what Lynn has got to say. On the challenges that graduates face in finding employment in our industry.
So nice to see so many familiar faces. I have been out of the circuit for a while as I changed my career. But I'm going to talk about most of my experience in education has been at the other end of the scale, so level 7 and level 8, which has already been mentioned, level 7 being masters and level 8, which nobody's really talked about, is PhD level. So I'm also a PhD supervisor, so if anybody wants to do a PhD, then let me know. So I'm going to read out a very short introduction about, hopefully, that kind of fills the transition between one career and another, and then I've got a few slides that I'm going to whiz through. It has been a bit like a one-year research project, so it'll be hopefully interesting to see the just observations that I've made. So over the last 20 years of working in higher education, I've helped hundreds or maybe thousands of graduates successfully find work. I am a passionate advocate of inspiring people to design and make things, enabling them to enjoy the career I did as a furniture designer earlier in my life. Working in education for so long, I developed many collaborative industry connections with leading companies such as KI, I see Jonathan's here, who was very supportive of all the things we did on the MA, as well as Herman Miller and Vitra and Hans and Urkel and many, many others. Many of those employed my graduates, and many smaller companies did too. Since the furniture department I headed at Bucks New University closed last year in High Wycombe, design education and the significance of that related to finding work in the furniture industry is now my primary interest. I was encouraged by industry to start my own business. Just over a year ago, helping furniture employers find good people and helping good graduates find the right employer. I didn't know that I was stepping into a bit of a gap. It was a part of my job before that I did as part of my job, and I've just continued to do something I did before. As Gary said, I continue to be an external examiner on furniture courses at Birmingham City University, Kingston University and Dublin Institute of Technology, while still teaching 1 day a week at Rycote College in Oxford, who I want to kind of shout about because I think they do an amazing job, and somebody earlier said, how can colleges kind of engage more with employers? And I don't know another college that engages as well as Rycote does. This is my little business brand, and I like this strapline. It's slower than email. I found out that people don't read emails. People want to talk to people, and that's what I do. So my presentation is in 3 parts. I'm going to give an overview of what I've seen over the last year. It has been like a research project. I've gone into more than 25 companies to find out the kinds of people they're looking for. And at any one time, I have over 150 people who are looking for work in the industry. It's completely broad and it's completely diverse, from all of the things that have been mentioned today, from upholstery to cabinet makers to designers to fitters to retail, sales, all sorts have come into my radar. I'm going to talk a bit about some of the issues that both the people, graduates and also experienced people have faced, and employers. So I've been really lucky to see things from both views. And I'm going to show some examples of those. I'm not saying either any of them are good or bad. It's a complete cross-section. And then a few perceptions of jobs. I thought it was interesting that's been mentioned already that the perceptions of the industry to young people. And I do find that people say kind of negative things about particular jobs in the industry. And a lot of my time is kind of counselling them to realise that the jobs are exciting and are interesting. This is the last group of graduates I taught at Bucks on the MA. And it was my mission at that stage, which was just over, 18 months ago, to help these people. This is the female cohort of the MA. Haven't got one of the boys. And we all wore moustaches because they were pretty cross, these students. They were quite cross that their course was closing and they weren't finishing. So we had a bit of a mission on our hands to kind of deal with them. But all of them, you might recognise some of them, all of them did find work on graduation and did very well. I have helped all of them in that kind of mission. So that's the graduates. I know a lot more. I probably know more graduates than anyone in the country, and I've kept in touch with most of them going back 25 years. So now I'm helping people who are actually looking for senior roles in the industry as well. So that's the graduates. Employers are also of huge important significance for me. Because, so this was a group of students I took round Vitra. We regularly did that with large companies, small companies. I know Reichert would do it now. Hugely important thing to do to make the jobs attractive to people, which I do believe all the companies we worked with, whenever we went into a company, made a huge difference. So this is some of the job titles that I have. These are real titles that I'm dealing with at the moment. To give a kind of idea of the terminology that faces not just graduates but anybody looking for a job in the furniture industry, and that's probably half of them. That's just as many as I could fit on one slide. So immediately there's an issue with job titles. That people will look at a job title and they'll say, that's not me. When in fact, I know it is. I know the skills of the people and I know that they would match some of those titles. So some of my time now is spent kind of talking to employers about maybe being a bit more mindful of the words that are used in job titles. And they seem to get ever more confusing. The next thing is job descriptions and person specifications, which is another issue that I think it's quite often that employers haven't stepped out or maybe given their job description to their 18-year-old daughter to read, to see that actually some of the terminology, some of the acronyms that are used in job descriptions are really off-putting, and people will think if they don't understand the acronym, then they're not going to get the job. So those are just my little observations about job descriptions. Not saying it's across the board, but I have found that. So issues for candidates are confidence is the biggest one, and you probably find that across the board, particularly in education. That even experienced people with 6 or 8 or 10 years experience lack confidence, sometimes more because they've not applied for a job for 10 years or 15 years. And so they say to me, I haven't got a CV. Oh, I haven't done a CV for 20 years. So I spend a lot of time with people helping them, and also not having this whole perception of a CV. Some employers don't want a CV. Some employers want just to meet people. So that's another kind of minefield of stuff that people have to work out before they apply for a job. Then in creative, particularly design jobs, portfolio. Bring your portfolio. What does that mean? What is a portfolio? With the whole social media kind of boom that we've got, there's a million ways of dealing with a portfolio now, which are nothing like when I was at college. So I do a lot of work on that. And I also talk to employers about what they want to see. So do they really mean a portfolio, or do they want to see something else? How much to expose is a good question. So graduates and people tell me things that they wouldn't tell an employer. So they'll tell me that they've got a mother who's dying, and that's why they want a job in Cornwall. Or they'll tell me that they were pregnant in their third year of college, and that set them back a bit, but they wouldn't tell that to an employer. When actually, those things can be turned into positive things for the person. That's why they want to work in Newcastle. That's why they don't want to work in a particular place in the country. So that's a big question, is how much do people... it's not about honesty as much as what is going to put people off giving them a job. Other things there, interview costs and practicalities. Employers will say to me, why are these people not coming? Why don't they want this job? And sometimes it's because they can't afford to travel for the interview. Now, an employer might say, well, do they want to work here or not? Some of their financial concerns are really genuine. And so I have helped employers recently to make their interview process more attractive and more enjoyable for the people going for the job. Salary discussions are really difficult for graduates. They always say to me they don't want to talk about salary, so I do it for them. It's easier to do it third hand, isn't it, when it's not you? But do be aware, if you're an employer, that salary discussions are right at the front of everybody's brain, but they don't mention it. And I'm going to say something about incentives in a moment. A few images to show what I've found, and all of the people I'm showing have successfully got their job. Some of you might recognise this ex-student of mine. And one of the things that employers, I did some feedback from employers, what they liked about her CV was that it was short, it was 1 page of A4, it had no narrative, so it didn't say, I am a team player and I'm very good at X, Y and Z. Done it again. But within that, you can see if somebody's won 4 awards, then it says something about them. There's also some images of work, and it's kind of making you want to interview that person. I always encourage people to put a photograph of themselves with any of their CV or portfolio. And I did this little test with employers recently. Who would you employ from those pictures? Because people will put a picture on their portfolio or their CV, and it'll be terrible because it'll just say something that's all wrong about them. So of all of those people, you could say, well, I could say to you, which one would you employ? Who looks more employable on those photos? Nobody's wanting to commit. Which one? The middle one. Yeah, that is right. The middle one came out as the most popular. She looks happy. She looks like somebody you want to be around. And she's obviously on her piece of furniture and she's proud of it. Having said that, one employer said to me, yeah, but the girl on the left could be looking at porn on that screen. and the girl on the right could have worked so hard that she's collapsed out of tiredness. Another thing that people put, this might raise a smile in the room, because there's a couple of people here who are on the photo. But people say, I'm a team player. What does that mean? What does that mean? There's someone on there who's clearly a team player. Sorry, Tony, I had to include you. So I heard this morning when Tim, the lovely student who spoke, was 9 in 2008. This was 2008. And this was a study tour to Italy. But I thought it was nice to say, I say to graduates, if you don't just say I'm a team player, show somehow that you are. Joe's on there as well, Chris. So just to sum up that part, is that it's a very two-sided thing, that the employers and the candidate have to be attracting each other. I see my role now very much as a matchmaker. It's very much like dating, which sounds really cheesy, but it is about me having these people and knowing these employers and knowing that they have skills or interests in common that go beyond just the skills required for the job quite often. So that each party has to be respectful of the other, and that it's a choice, that it's a two-way choice. A candidate can choose a job or not, and an employer can choose the person or not. And I've seen it fail both ways round. Mentioned portfolio. What is its purpose these days? People will have links to their Instagram account or their Pinterest or their... So it's all a bit confusing for people at the moment as to say, is this word now out of date? Is portfolio not the thing people want to see anymore? So here's some issues that are from both sides. Issues for the employer. Personality fit has come out as almost being the top thing, particularly with a small company and a small team. So will they drive me insane because there's only 3 of us in the office? Those are very difficult things, intangible things to measure at an interview. So that's something that I try and help both parties with. People have to trust each other and they have to trust me. So if I say, I taught this person 5 years ago and I know this person, then you have to trust that I know what I'm talking about. There are lots of bad CVs. I spend a lot of time every day reading bad CVs. I'm sure you do as well. Some issues for me are that there are some companies with great HR departments. There are some companies with terrible HR departments and some with no HR department. So when I'm dealing with companies and writing, I've even had to write a contract of employment recently, which I'd never done before, because they didn't have an HR department. I would just say there that if that the problem that I'm alluding to there is that there are things, this PSL was thrown out at me recently. I don't like acronyms at all, but it means that I wasn't on the preferred supplier list, so I couldn't, even though I had 2 perfect candidates for a job, they couldn't see them because the HR department said that I wasn't on their PSL. So I have to make sure I'm dealing with the decision maker. That's quite difficult sometimes. So somebody in the company will say, yes, we're going to give your lovely graduate a job, and then it's not the person who's in the position to say that. So that's just an issue for me. And some of the challenges for everyone, I think, are to move quickly. So people will get a job somewhere else if you don't snap them up quickly. Competition, that there's a lot of competition for obviously, it's an obvious thing to say, but for the best candidates. Interview tests. Some companies do interview tests, which can work and can fail. Just something that I've seen go wrong, but can obviously go right, particularly just from a confidence point of view and putting people off. And again, salary requirements. Somebody mentioned, I think it was Martin Didak, about, or was it somebody before, about incentives and benefits, that people have to be applying for something that's, you were talking about attractiveness of jobs. And I think that these are some of the things I've picked up from employers that they offer. One employer offers their birthdays off, which was a reason which really persuaded somebody to take that job. So some of those are obvious, but they're all things that people are sometimes a bit scared to mention. Oh, I don't really like Richard Branson, but I thought that was a nice little slogan. Train people well enough so they can leave, treat them well enough so they don't want to. I thought that was a nice slogan. And that's my contact details. So if you want any help, even just free advice of any kind, just get in touch with me, because I now have become quite experienced in going into companies, talking to employers, and finding out some of the issues that have completely surprised me. I think that's it. I don't know how I did for time, but I think that's it.